Okay. So some vocabulary before we start the speech on overpopulation. So one is the word unchecked, which just means out of control or unrestrained. Then another term is tongue-in-cheek. So if something is tongue-in-cheek, it's a bit sarcastic, a bit ironic. You don't need to take it 100% seriously. Then I'm also going to refer to a novel I've read called Game Control. Game Control. This speech also contains quite a lot of figures, but most of them are relatively simple. But we're talking about billions, not millions. Okay, so now I'm going to start the speech proper. So my speech today is about overpopulation. So overpopulation is a subject that's cropped up quite a lot in the press recently, in the newspapers that I read at least. So I've been reading about overpopulation in The Guardian and in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. And coincidentally, I also read a book recently that was kind of about overpopulation as well. And that book is called Game Control. And it's a strange book, but I quite enjoyed it. So the premise of the novel is, as some people say, there are too many people who live on the planet. And too many people living on the planet is bad for the planet, but also for people themselves. So, if there are too many people, one of the characters says, let's just kill some of the world's inhabitants. So one of the characters says, I'm going to develop a poison, a waterborne poison, and then I'm going to put it in the water, and it will kill 1/3 of the world's population. And this guy, he may be a lunatic, but he's not discriminatory. He doesn't just want to kill poor people. So the poison will kill rich and poor alike. It will kill 1/3 of the world's population. Now, the whole thing isn't great literature. It's not to be taken seriously. The book's a kind of tongue-in-cheek look at what happens when experts who apparently want to do good and help people, but it's what happens when they forget about the people they're actually supposed to be helping, because this guy considers himself a good person, but he's willing to kill 1/3 of the world's population to help the other 2/3. I don't know if that's justice or fairness. Anyway, so there's this strange book I've read, Game Control, and then, as I said, overpopulation is being discussed quite a lot in the press. So both The Guardian and the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung have both recently produced a series of articles about the world's overcrowded cities, countries and continents. It goes without saying that any article about overpopulation will include some statistics, and I'd like to share some of those statistics with you out of the generosity of my heart. So currently in 2018, each of us shares the planet with 7 billion others. But back in 1925, there were only 2 billion people on the Earth. Then in 1960, we hit the 3 billion mark. In 1974, it was 4 billion. Then in 1987, the year I was born, incidentally, the 6th billion person was born. Then in 2011, we got to 7 billion. And now, as we project into the future, it's predicted that by 2023, there'll be 8 billion people living on this earth. And then by 2030, 9 billion. So you see that the time span between each million is getting shorter. So it took 35 years to get from 2 billion to 3 billion. But it's only going to take 7 years to get from 8 billion to 9 billion. And don't forget that we've seen this exponential growth over the last 40 years, but all that growth has happened while China had its one-child policy in place, which obviously kind of controlled or put a lid on population growth. Now, today, where is most of the population growth coming from? Of course, it's not coming from Europe. I mean, there are some countries in Europe, like Germany, which are actively shrinking. So no, population growth isn't happening in Europe. It's happening among the Latino community in America, in Asia, and in Africa. So here I have some more statistics. So population growth, as I said, mainly to be found in Africa, where the birth rate per woman is 4.5 children. So that's the average, 4.5 children per woman. The worldwide average is just 2.5 children. And let's look at some specific countries in Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. So according to UN forecasts, over the next 85 years, Niger's population could increase tenfold, so times 10. So it will go from 20 to 200 million. And the similarly sounding Nigeria could go from 185 million to 915 million. So Nigeria, by the turn of the century, could be home to almost 1 billion people, which to me is just mind-boggling. Anyway, so you might be thinking, well, so what? I mean, thanks for all these statistics. What does that even mean? Who cares? Is any of this even a problem? Surely the Earth can provide enough resources for these people. It always has. I mean, since the 17th and 18th century, there have always been pessimists who have said, oh, you know, there's way too many people living on the Earth. It's all going to end badly. I'm sure you've all heard of the economic theorist Malthus. So he believed that food production could never keep pace with population growth. But Malthus turned out to be a false prophet. He didn't foresee all the major changes that came about with the Industrial Revolution. Nor was Malthus able to predict that there would be new farming techniques and that farmers would begin to use mineral fertilizers. And both of these things can dramatically increase yields. So farmers are able to produce much more food than Malthus ever thought possible. So maybe in the future, thanks to human ingenuity, it might be possible to feed 9 billion people, 10 billion people, or 15 billion people. That's especially true if we eat less meat and we reduce our food waste. So I think I read somewhere, some horrifying statistics that we waste 1/3 of all the food that is produced. So if we could put an end to that, then we could feed many more mouths. However, even if human beings do come up with new technologies and new solutions, I do think that unchecked population growth is a problem. So even if we have really good urban planning, national planning, we use less resources, I think 10 billion people on this planet would really take its toll on the Earth. But I think that protecting the planet is also about changing our mentality. It's not just about numbers and fewer people being born. And I think that sometimes in Europe and in America, we have a misguided sense of Western superiority when we're talking about overpopulation. Oh God, if only poor people would have fewer children. Then we could just keep living the way we want to in the West. We wouldn't have to change our habits. Our hunger for minerals, for plastic, for fuel, for grains, for timber, for sand, for meat. It could all continue. And I did say sand because you may think, why is he talking about sand? But apparently even sand as a resource is running out. We need sand to make glass. We need sand to make cement. We need sand to hold beach volleyball tournaments. I'm not joking. So apparently we're even running out of sand. So I think sometimes it can be difficult to justify our criticism of people, particularly in the developing world, if they have one more children. I mean, we have to take a good look at ourselves in the mirror, don't we? Let me give you some more statistics about Western lifestyles, which make me think we should think twice before we criticise someone having an extra child. For example, the average American uses 400 litres of water per day. So I guess those 400 litres of water, that includes flushing the toilet, using the washing machine, the dishwasher, leaving the tap on, taking a shower, all that. In Europe, we're a bit better. We only use 200 litres of water per day. But in Africa, it's 20. And then what about meat consumption? Beef consumption in particular. So, not surprisingly, in India, which is a Hindu country where the cow is sacred, beef consumption is only 0.5 kilograms, per capita per year. So, I'll say that again because it wasn't clear. So, beef consumption in India is 0.5 kilograms per person per year. In comparison, in Canada, it's 17.4 kilograms per person per year. And in the US, it's 25.6 kilograms per capita per year. So, overpopulation is a pressing issue to my mind. But if we're looking at the environment and preserving the planet, then I think we should focus more on decreasing consumption, particularly in the Western world, rather than banging on about overpopulation. So, decreasing our consumption. Easier said than done. Thank you very much.